In Hague, Donald Trump pushed Europeans to increase the military service cost and GDP. Also, European Union need Donald Trump to be pushed by him to increase this budget. It's not good way, and many countries inside Europe still haven't done this. So, you know, we have big problem about the feeling for our security and responsibility for secure European Union.
I'm going to get to you in just a second, Mr. Secretary-General, of course. But
can
President Stubb, I'd like to ask you first. Do you see this sense of urgency for a Plan B among your European partners? Is there the need for that? And who should lead the charge? Because, I mean, it's a bit unfair. We're sitting here on the panel with Finland and Poland. You know, you are really doing a lot when it comes to defense, especially Finland. You have this comprehensive approach to defense in your country. Are your partners, are they experiencing the urgency? Who needs to come up with the Plan B and lead the charge?
Well, I mean, two answers. First is a direct answer to the question of this panel: can Europe defend itself? My answer is unequivocally yes.
Without the Americans?
Without the Americans. I mean,
how?
Well, look.
But you're relying on them for these key elements. How would you do it at scale and at duration and at intensity?
With an assumption that the United States would cut off completely any kind of work.
Yeah.
Well, if we look at the defense composure of Europe by and large, and a country like Finland, so how do we do it? We have conscription. 1 million have done it. We can mobilize 280,000 soldiers within weeks. We have 62 F-18s. Your next question is going to be, do they fly without Americans? No, they don't. But do we trust that they will continue to fly because it's in the interest of America to do so? Yes. We just bought 64 F-35s. We have the biggest artillery in Europe together with Poland. We have long-range missiles, land, sea, and air. We don't have these because we're worried about Stockholm, right? So, the bottom line is that if you ask me the question that can the Finnish military defend itself against a Russian attack, the whole defense posture of the way in which you do it, yes, we can. But then the second question, which you were alluding to, I think we also have to understand that you fight wars on the battlefield, but you win them at home. And that means that all of us need to focus more on comprehensive security. The civilian side of things. That's why we have civilian shelters for 4.4 million Finns. That's why we have a security of supply where we don't get into any kind of trouble with food shortages, energy shortages, or electricity grids, because we've got this. And this is the, I think, capability that a lot of European states need to do. My absolutely final point. It's all good and well to talk about percentages, but just remember, you don't fight wars with percentages. You fight wars with capabilities, and those you just need to have in stock.
Do European NATO allies need to think more about having capabilities that overlap with the United States?
Well, this is
to hedge their bets.
The NATO is constructed like this, that the US, Canada, and the European NATO allies were completely integrated. It doesn't mean that there is the US coming to the rescue of Europe or Europe coming to the rescue of the United States. We are working completely integrated. And for the protection of both the US and Europe, it's crucial that NATO is there. There was one big irritant on the American side with NATO. And the big irritant since Eisenhower was that they were spending, the US was spending, so much more than Europe was spending. Even today, the US is spending 3.5% of GDP on core defense. We are spending in Europe average 2% of defense. And here's my question to the audience. I mean, many of you, I know, criticize Donald Trump. But do you really think that without Donald Trump, 8 big economies in Europe, including Spain and Italy and Belgium, Canada, by the way, also outside Europe, would have come to 2% in 2025, when they were only on 1.5% at the beginning of the year? No way. Without Donald Trump, this would never have happened. They're all on 2% now. Do you really think that in the summit in The Hague, as already Alex was saying, sorry, the president of Finland was saying, that we would come to an overall defense spending of 5%, including 3.5% in core defense, if President Trump would not have been re-elected as president of the United States? No way. It would never have happened. So again, I'm not popular with you now because I'm defending Donald Trump, but I really believe we can be happy that he is there because he has forced us in Europe to step up, to face the consequences, that we have to take care more of our own defense. And this is the thing. The Americans still have over 80,000 soldiers in Europe. They are still, including in Poland, in Germany, etc. They are still heavily invested in European defense. And yes, they have to pivot more towards Asia. So it is only logical for them to expect us in Europe to step up over time. And there is this plan already since Jens Stoltenberg, my predecessor, designed it, the NATO defense planning process, to over time make sure that Europe can take over more of these capabilities, of these core enablers from the US, to do more of the protection of the European continent. We're still having a strong conventional US presence in Europe, also going forward. And of course, the nuclear umbrella as our ultimate guarantor. But again, I'm absolutely convinced without Donald Trump, we would not have taken those decisions, and they are crucial, particularly for the European and the Canadian side of NATO, to really grow up in the post-Cold War world.
Madam Kelly, you are not happy with this answer, I suppose, of Mark Rutte, that we need Donald Trump in the European Union, but we believe in our military service in Poland. I would like to add that Poland won with the Soviets and Bolsheviks. Finland won with the Soviets and Bolsheviks in 20th century. Japanese and Afghans won with the Soviet Union. So we are ready in our countries to secure our independence, but we need geopolitical and some relations in Europe and in the world to be stronger.
We have time for just a quick closing round now, and I'd like to turn to Nadia to kick us off with that, because we had this statement from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen yesterday describing a seismic change that makes it necessary to build a new form of European independence. And I'm wondering if you can give us, from the investment perspective, what you think is necessary to realize that vision.
I want to, since it's a closing remark, and I was listening to my colleagues, and I want to say, I think the European Union is a superpower. And I think we have to believe in ourselves and our capability. And I'm very happy to see three leaders that are really very self-assured, you know, because that's what I think we need, to speak clearly. We are a superpower when it comes to research, to health tech, to new technologies, to research centers, universities. We are in quantum computing, we are in key technologies. We are not a defense superpower because the European Union is a project for peace. So it makes sense that we need some time to ramp it up. From the European Investment Bank perspective, we're all in to support Europe to be stronger in the world, but also to contribute to a peaceful world, a multilateral framework that actually can continue to provide us with win-win partnerships based on respect, shared prosperity, stability, because I think that that's, at the end of the day, what our children and grandchildren expect from us that are at the helm of important institutions at this historic moment for us.
Paul, what do you think? What do you think is needed for this new form of European independence from your business perspective?
I think it's a moment for us, again, what the Secretary-General just said about defense spending, contribution to NATO. The President of the United States has done the same in healthcare spend in most of the European markets. In the UK, demanding in the UK to go from 0.3% GDP to 0.6% over a period of time to pay for innovation in the countries. You know, that's a really remarkable intervention or challenge from the President of the United States. I've been in healthcare 35 years. I'm having different conversations with heads of state, ministers of health, ministers of finance, on what it takes to be the champion for the innovation. One of the things you've got to do is give patients in your country access to the best medicines in the world. You can't want the manufacturing, want the research euro, but then not give it to patients. And I think that's a real issue. A lot of people are still struggling to understand that 54% of medicines approved by the European Medicines Agency aren't available to patients in Europe. Approved in Europe, for Europe, not available, because money is not being made available because there are other priorities. And we don't ever belittle the trade-offs. Draghi was very clear. Everybody read the report. Everybody understood it. My conversations with the Commission have focused on fair play between member states and not enough on competing with China and the US. I think the US is ready for the challenge because in the end, patients win with access to innovation. I think China is coming. China is going to launch 40% of the world's new medicines by 2030. 40%. And we're not having that conversation. Europe has all of the skills and capabilities, if prioritized, to get it done. and to compete, not just to play fair, but to compete in the rest of the world.
I want to turn to Poland now. And Mr. President, I'd like to ask you, we mentioned a little bit earlier, I mean, the threat that is posed by Russia, its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. You know this, of course, better than anyone, being on the eastern flank there. Do you think, in all of this talk, in all of this conversation over Greenland, is Ukraine the casualty here? Do we run that risk?
Can you repeat? I don't understand. Is
Ukraine? The conversation has been dominated in the past week and days.
Yeah, about Greenland.
About Greenland.
Yeah. Okay, and no.
Where is the attention now on Ukraine? What could this potentially mean for Ukraine? What could it mean for the resources that they need so desperately in order to maintain this fight on the European continent?
I think that Ukraine issue subject after the attack of Russian Federation is most important, not only for Poland and eastern flank of NATO, but for all free world. And I think that the problem around Greenland doesn't mean that we don't think about the Ukraine. We support Ukraine in Poland, in NATO, in European Union. United States of America supported Ukraine, and we have to consider this problem as the main problem in Europe nowadays. And I'm very happy that we are going, maybe slowly, but we are going to long-lasting peace in Ukraine. This must happen, I think. But I'm not afraid, Madam Kali, that the situation around the Greenland means that we forget about Ukraine. We understand the problem about the Ukraine and still feel the Russian threat. We are still in Eastern Central Europe under the Russian threat, and I think that we are in the middle of the hybrid war. This is the peculiar Soviet composition which we have known for 100 years. This is the composition of a military force, information, disinformation, propaganda, and we are nowadays in the middle of hybrid war in the European Union.
President Stubb, I'd like to ask you as well. The U.S. administration has made it very clear. We are in an era now of hard power, and they will wield it where they feel it is advantageous or necessary. You've said earlier that Europe can defend itself without the Americans. If it comes down...
not exact, Mike, so that's not a quote.
More or less, more or less. We'll go back to the transcript.
Let's stick to the left on this one. Yeah.
More or less, more or less.
I love journalists.
Stubb against us.
But if it comes down to it, given the dynamics that we have seen here, does Europe also need to have the potential to defend itself against America?
No, I mean, come on, let's not push the hypotheticals here. Let's get back. Let's get back to the reality of the situation, and let's put it back into perspective, and especially the war in Ukraine, which Karol there quite well mentioned. Look, what has Russia achieved in the past 4 years? It's acquired 20% of the territory of Ukraine through military warfare, roughly 2%. In the process of doing that, it has provided about 1 million casualties and dead. It has decreased its sphere of influence. You can see the Central Asian countries, you can see the Southern Caucasus detaching themselves from the Russian Empire. You look at the Russian economy right now. If we go with the inflation rates of the 2 first weeks, we're looking at 30% inflation this year. 16% interest rates, zero growth, no more reserves, incapacity to pay the soldiers when the war ends. So I'm more worried about Russia's unwillingness to end this war because they cannot afford to do so than about Russia's capability to win this war not end this war because they're moving ahead. So let's keep things into perspective. NATO hasn't entered the scene yet, and they have not been able to advance in the past 4 years as much as expected. This war has been an utter strategic failure of President Putin. He increased the size of NATO. He made Ukraine European. He increase the defense budgets of European states. And here we are asking ourselves, shaking, are we able to defend ourselves? My answer is yes, we are.
Secretary-General.
Absolutely.
Secretary-General, I'd like to ask for your remarks also on that point. We've been talking about can Europe defend itself? The question is how, and how that evolves also over the next years. Do you ever see a day where European defense doesn't have NATO as the cornerstone?
No, I don't. And let's not forget the EU is great. It is 23 countries in NATO of the 32 are also in the EU. But it is only 25% of NATO overall GDP. 75% of NATO GDP is outside the European Union. Let's not forget. That's a fact. The US is by far the most powerful nation on earth. And the President of the United States is therefore the leader of the free world. And you cannot envisage NATO without the leader of the free world being an integral part of that organization. And nobody wants it, not on the US side, not on the European side. He said last night in his presser that he was doubtful whether the Europeans would come to the rescue if Article 5 will be triggered. I tell him, yes, they will. And they did on the 11th of September 9/11 in 2001, when for the first and only time Article 5 was triggered. I have no doubt the US will come to the rescue here, we will come to the rescue of the US, and we need each other for our collective protection. You made a very good point. The risk here is that we focus, of course, on Greenland, because we have to make sure that that issue gets solved in an amicable way. But the main issue is not Greenland now. The main issue is Ukraine. And I agree with everything Alex Stubb was saying, but I'm also a little bit worried that we might drop the ball focusing so much on these other issues.
Yeah.
And as we speak, Russian missiles and Russian drones are attacking the energy infrastructure in Ukraine. We know that it is now minus 20 degrees in Kiev. We know that Ukraine can only take care of 60% of its own electricity. And yes, it is true, the Russians have lost in December 1,000 people dead. Not seriously wounded, dead a day. That's over 30,000 in the month of December. In the 1980s in Afghanistan, the Soviets lost 20,000 in 10 years. Now they lose 30,000 in 1 month. But they still continue the attack. They still increase the attack. And that means that if we Europeans here in NATO are thinking that because of the 90 billion the Commission has been able to bring together with the nations, or because the peace process is moving in the right direction, we can forget about the defense of Ukraine. Don't. They need our support now, tomorrow and the day after. And yes, great if there is a peace deal. Everybody's working on that. The Americans, of course, are leading that process. Great that the 90 billion is there, but that will only be there in March, April, May, whenever. So that still takes time. So I need the European allies to keep focus on this issue. And what I'm really worrying about is that because of the peace process and because of the 90 billion, we lose sight, and that in the meantime, the Ukrainians do not have enough interceptors, have enough American gear particularly they need, because it is not any longer available in Europe, for them to defend themselves. So this focus on Ukraine should be our #1 priority. And then we can discuss on all the issues, including Greenland, but it should be Ukraine first, because it is crucial for our European and US security.
I'd like to open up the conversation now to the audience. There's a very high-level audience, we have to say. I'm seeing the President of Latvia sitting in the front row. I believe I also spotted the Defense Minister of the Netherlands here as well.
Hey, where is he?
Right there. Wave hello. We'll be passing around a mic, and I would like to ask that you please stand up, and that questions are kept brief, because I see many hands going up.
Thank you very much. I have a very short question to Secretary Rutte. There are negotiations about Ukraine, and I fully agree with you that Ukraine is the main challenge, and then Russia basically is the main threat. The question is, once we agree that there are some chances for the long-lasting peace, are we as Europe prepared for what would be next with Russia, with this aggressive approach, with a society which is still, through the disinformation, educated, let me say, with aggressive approach towards the West? What will happen with those thousands or hundreds of thousands of troops, capabilities, etc., if they won't be engaged in Ukraine? They won't just wait for the better, prosperous future. Are we ready as NATO to take this problem? Thank you very much.
Yes,
and a brief response, please.
We are ready today, there's no doubt. But we have to be ready in 27 and 29 and 31. And this is why what we decided in The Hague to ramp up defense spending to this 5% was crucial. But we also have to ramp up the defense industrial production, and we're not doing it. Not in the US, not in Europe. We are not nearly producing enough. The fact that Poland, which is the closest ally to the US you can find, is buying in South Korea is because they cannot buy enough in the US or in the European defense
buying in
industrial
Finland.
base. And Finland, yeah, but also Finland. Yes, Alex, I love you, but you are not producing enough. Your defense industrial base has to ramp up, and you know it, so please spend time on that. And this is true for the whole of NATO territory. So it is not only money, it's also the defense industrial base, including preparing our other industries, including our car industries, etc., for a moment when there might be a situation where we need them. Russia is on a war economy footing. They spend 40% of the state budget on defense. 200 billion a year with a spending power with the 200 billion because of the structure of their economy, which is much higher than we can do in Europe. So we really have to be watchful here. Yes, we can defend ourselves today, but we have to deliver on the The Hague commitments. Not because of Donald Trump. Yes, it equalizes with the US, that keeps them in, but particularly because we have to defend ourselves.
Okay. I think in the next round, perhaps we take 2 questions and then we'll have them answered. See, many. Yes.
Sorry, my name is Andrea Malaguti. What do you think about the board of peace with Lukashenko and Putin for Gaza?
Please,
one more over here.
NATO has 32 countries in the Northern Atlantic, and I'm not commenting on things outside North Atlantic area. Sorry, I have too much on my plate already. Thank you.
Mark Rutte, could you please comment on Mark's speech yesterday here in Davos that was very honest? What is your reaction to it?
I respect him a lot, and I'll see him later today. And I think he had a speech which was strong on Canadian values and what Canada can contribute to the world. At the same time, I would say this is very good, and Canada's back. When you look at NATO, they were spending 1.3%, 1.4%. They got to the 2%. They have now a plan to reach the 5%. They are massively helping out with Ukraine now. So I could say since he became Prime Minister, NATO is really back in NATO, back in defending the transatlantic alliance. And I think that's great news.
I think
have one question here and one question there.
Sorry, can I ask?
Sure.
I think it was an excellent speech. It was a deep analysis of the change in the world order and the new balance that we're looking at. It was very realistic. It talked about values-based realism as a driver for Canadian foreign policy. All in all, I think one of the best speeches that we've heard here in Davos this week so far.
Okay, we'll go first here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Would you think that if the transfer of the sovereignty of Greenland can be achieved, would you think this might lead to the demise of the idea of so-called Western collective? And secondly, that if these things be transferred, would you think that the NATO 3.0, just like the President Stubb said, might be veering to something more look like the Warsaw Pact rather than original NATO? Of course, we have a Polish president. You can also correct me. Thank you very much.
One question there.
I'm Tamer from Saudi Arabia with a Greek mother and an Italian wife. It's very clear
you must be a happy man.
Europe can defend itself. That's very clear today. But my question is, do we feel safer? I'm planning to half retire in Europe. Do I feel safer today with all this stock up of military?
Yes.
As you asked the question, when the war is over, what do you do with all these military?
If you want to prevent war, prepare for war. The only way we can prevent the Russians or anyone who wants to do us harm, is to make sure that they know that the reaction we will have is devastating. Today, yes, it is. But if we would have continued with this 1.8, 1.9% defense spending and a defense industrial base, which is not producing enough, we would not be ready in 29 and 31. And our adversaries know this. So I know that people are worried that, we are spending more on defense. Yes, we do this to prevent war from breaking out. You have to be strong. We have to be strong against those who wish us ill.
I think that what we are doing is still preparing to prevent ourselves for a war. And according in terms of today's main question, can Europe defend itself? I hope that we will never answer this question in terms of kinetic war. And this is our responsibility, leaders of Europe, to think about the future and to be ready for even kinetic war. And I think we try to do this.
But one point, if I may add one point which is important, is that Europe's defense is not only about tanks. It is also about health. It is also about win-win partnerships around the world, building strong partnerships and finding alliances that go beyond maybe what we had in the world order of the last 70 years. That is also a way to defend Europe. I want to also put a word for all the actions that are being taken, which go, I think, in the right direction for a stronger Europe. And it's not only about the 5%. It is very important, but it's not only that.
Yeah, and can I answer the question from the gentleman there? I think we have we have to understand that the world order is changing, much like it did after 1918, 1945, and 1989. And it's now emerging. And I think we have two options, which obviously are not binary. One is a multipolar world, and that multipolar world is about transactions, it's about deals, and it's about spheres of interest. So that's when we go back to the 19th century. A multilateral world is one where you have strong international institutions, rules, and norms. I support the latter, and I think that a majority of the states in the world do that as well. But the multilateral order that was created after World War II was created in the image of the West. Therefore, we need to now change the power structure and give agency to bigger players in the global South. Otherwise, we go back into a dog-eats-dog world, and we try to avoid that.
I'd like to thank you so much to everyone. There's a lot of hands still going up. I mean, the conversation, I think, is going to be continuing for quite some time. A relatively eventful day, I think, also ahead of us here at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I know that there are bilaterals also planned as well, a lot of diplomacy, a flurry going on. You have been here with us for Can Europe Defend Itself? Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much especially for the panelists. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.